we got to get this case going. So we still having some issues right now legally with the lawyer. It's the client. The client is the one that makes the decision. But I'm pretty sure the lawyers will be telling him, you should refrain from this. Unless you're really ready to go to prison for a very long time, stay off the stand.
Well, that would be smart. I'm sure people are going to advise upon that, but he may argue that he wants to talk. He did talk during the body cam footage as well when he was arrested. We're going to take a quick look at that and then talk about it on the other side.
Oh, yep.
Rest here. I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with this a lot in your career. Not everyone looks as calm as he was.
Oh, he's cool, calm, and collective. You can see, but he's a gangster. It's the same rigmarole. He's been through this numerous times. I don't know his rap sheet, but I'm quite sure he has a lengthy rap sheet. So he knows how to deal with the police. You can see he's laughing, he's talking, he's asking for a sip of water. His hands is behind his back. There's no resistance whatsoever. And he's just ready, like, all right, I've been through this before. Take me down to the county jail. Let's get this done.
Well, he said, I'm only going out for a walk. And as he was walking, the cops approached him. It almost seemed like he wasn't taken by surprise. It almost seems like he wakes up every morning feeling, oh, when are they going to come for me?
Exactly. Yeah, that was the very early footage, which we didn't show. Yeah, it was like he's ready, just like, hey, I'm here. I'm Keefe D. Let's go. I've been waiting for you.
There was no resist at all.
No resistance whatsoever. But again, him resisting doesn't even make sense. You probably got 25 cops there. You see they're heavily armored. Where's he going? He didn't have a firearm on him. So he was just going for a morning walk. It didn't even make sense to resist. But because of his demeanor, it was easier for the cops. We like when people comply. Put your hands behind your back. We'll give you water. I'll let you drink the whole bottle. That's nice. All we want to do is get home safe. We don't want any officers getting hurt. So this actually is an arrest that the police love because we don't have to engage in fighting or resisting.
Well, he's had many interactions with police over the past few years, past decade. But I think one that stands out is that there was one time where a cop had questioned him and he said, yeah, I'm involved on what happened in one of the biggest rap murder cases ever, September 7th, 1996. In fact, he was boasting that, hey, I'm involved in that case. So it almost seems to me he wants to get caught.
Yes, or again, Michelle, he really thought that he could get away with this because it's so long. You got to understand, it's like your kids, right? You put cookies in the jar. You tell them don't take a cookie out the jar. They keep taking the cookie. There's no punishment. You're not taking their phone, their television away. They're going to keep taking the cookies. So this guy was getting away for so long. He's like, hey, I could boast. I could talk about it. Nobody's coming at me. I've already said numerous times. I was in a vehicle. There was discussion and I passed the gun off to Orlando. That right there, him incriminating himself passing a gun, I don't know why he wasn't locked up at that point.
Well, can you describe a little bit about that relationship? Orlando Anderson, who was his nephew, he was murdered 2 years later after Tupac Shakur was murdered. Obviously, once again, if you guys are just joining us, Keefe D is the only living suspect. Oh, before I finish that thought, there is a presser now going on right now, so I want to take us to that.
Get hired to review the grand jury transcripts or to prepare a motion if one is needed. But obviously the things that jump out is that there's no gun, there's no car, and there's no witnesses from 27 years ago.
Mr. Goodman, when things get finalized, do you plan to ask for bail?
Of course, I think Mr. Davis should be released on OR. He's not a flight risk. He's not a danger to the community. He's lived in Henderson for 11 years. And he's not going anywhere.
Ross, how do you defend someone who got the time publicly has said that they were there, they know what happened, and that they were handing this murder weapon to the person? How do you defend that?
Well, you have to look at the facts and circumstances surrounding why he gave those statements at the time that he gave those statements. But again, I haven't reviewed those statements in detail. I haven't reviewed the other evidence, but I believe there's a motive and incentive on why somebody would make a statement like that, even though it may not be true.
Is GT Ball still representing him? Is ED Ball still representing Mr. Davis?
I'm not sure what his relationship is right now, or whether or not he's been associated into the case.
Could you speak at all about the proffer agreement that he made with LAPD detectives 15 years ago?
That's one thing I haven't reviewed in detail, so I can't make a comment regarding that.
When you talk about how large this case is, I mean, how much work is this doing for you going through?
It's a big case. I mean, it's 27 years in the making, so I understand there's about 600 pages of grand jury transcripts, and you can imagine the amount of evidence and potentially impeachment evidence that comes along with all these witnesses that are going to come out of the woodwork.
There have been suggestions from key people himself that he has cancer, he has potentially terminal cancer, that his health is in very bad shape. Can I ask you, what do you know about him? How is he doing? You spoke of him today. What's his mood like?
Well, he's happy I was there today, and he's happy that shortly I can confirm his counsel if it gets finalized that we can bring a motion for bail so he can be released. And with respect to his medical condition, I've heard the same things. I haven't reviewed any medical records yet, so I can't comment on that. But apparently he did have colon cancer shortly before he gave those statements.
How's his well-being? Like you spoke to, how's his spirits?
The spirits are fine right now. He thinks that there are defenses, and he wants to fight the case.
Why did you say he confessed?
Well, I don't know if that is a confession. That's a legal conclusion. And like I said before, I'm not even in on the case yet. I haven't reviewed anything, but just based on the reports, I believe when I see these statements, which are extrajudicial statements, that there are reasons on why people say things. But as everybody here knows, that you have to corroborate those statements. And if you don't have a car, if you don't have a gun, you don't have witnesses to corroborate what Mr. Davis said under those circumstances, I believe there's an obvious defense to that on why he made those statements and a motive for making those statements. That's all I can answer at this point.
Thank you.
That's all I can hold
You guys
too.
not
I was
gonna say
like,
too much.
Thank you.
it's heavy after a while.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Y'all bring a stand next time. Hold it. That would have. Man.
All right, as you just heard, that was Keefe D's lawyer, Ross Goodman, answering some questions to the media. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to head back to Las Vegas to see the latest. Anjanette Levy is also on standby to talk to us. We'll be right back. Thanks for coming back to Law and Crime. I'm Michelle Yu. The arraignment for Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was just delayed again for the 1996 death of rapper Tupac Shakur. Now, Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy was inside that courthouse for the arraignment. We will get her on very soon. But for now, I want to welcome another legal guest for today, Matthew Mangino. Matthew, welcome. What is your take on this whole case with Keefe D?
Well, it's interesting, and when you contrast it with what we just saw yesterday with Joran Vandersloot, here's a guy who admitted to a murder and can't be charged with homicide because of the statute of limitations in Aruba. And here we have, a 27-year-old homicide that's now being prosecuted because new evidence has been obtained. So it's interesting to contrast these two cases and how they're so very different.
Matt, what did you take away from Keefe D's lawyer there, Ross Goodman, on what he had to say?
Well, it's interesting to see, again, that this arraignment has been delayed. And I think it's in part because of what we've heard from his attorney. And I think that, certainly this isn't the place where you're going to enter a guilty plea or you're going to do anything other than plead not guilty, find out what the charges are against you. And then, the case moves forward. It's docketed, it's scheduled. So it's not surprising that counsel, jockeys sort of for position and for the public at this stage of a proceeding.
Now, the other guest for this hour is former NYPD Commander Corey Pegues, who's in studio with me. Corey, what did you make of the lawyer there and what he had to say?
Well, just like Matt said, and I defer to Matt as a attorney, it really wasn't much he was saying. It was all the same stuff. He was deferring and hoping. What I got out of it was they haven't signed a retainer at this point, so there's not much he can say. And he did say, like, once that paperwork is done, then I can put in release on bail. So he can't really do much at this point because he's not officially his attorney.
Well, what I also got away from that, Matt, and as we were watching that, he said he hasn't reviewed all the materials about this case yet, but he does believe there's, a whole defense here, and that's that they don't have a weapon, they don't have any of that, and also he's the only living suspect. How big of that is it in play here?
Well, Michelle, anytime you're dealing with a homicide that occurred 27 years ago, and now you're trying to prosecute that case, it's always going to be difficult. And there's always going to be opportunity for the defense to make something out of, missing witnesses, unavailable witnesses who are now deceased or potential witnesses, the murder weapon, all those things, play a role in a case like this. And the fact that it's taken 27 years to make an arrest and to proceed with the prosecution all works in favor of the defense.
All right. And of course, our Anjanette Levy is in Las Vegas. She is covering this for us on Law and Crime. We hope to hear from her very soon. We do need to take another quick break here. Much more to do here on a very busy day of trial coverage. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Long Crime. I'm Michelle Yu. If you're just joining us, the arraignment for Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was delayed once again for the 1996 death of rapper Tupac Shakur. Long Crime's Anjanette Levy was inside that courthouse for the hearing, and she is here with us now to bring us the latest. Thank you so much, Anjanette. What were the vibes inside that courtroom?
Well, Michelle, it was kind of like Groundhog Day. We were all here 2 weeks ago for this same procedure, the same arraignment hearing. It was continued yet again. This time, though, Keefe D had a lawyer present. That's Dwayne Davis. His street name is Keefe D, of course. And his name is Ross Goodman. He does high-profile cases here in Las Vegas. His mother is the mayor of Las Vegas. And he asked for a 2-week delay because he said he's still finalizing the representation agreement with Dwayne Davis. And so there are some things that are still going to need to be worked out. So this arraignment will be continued until November 2nd. Same vibe as last time, really. A little less media there. I did not see Keefe D's family here this time, but I did meet up with a friend of his who came to support him. He wasn't in the courtroom, but he was outside the courtroom. So you could see Keefe D. I mean, he's very serious. He knows this is serious. It doesn't get any more serious than this in the legal system. He is facing a murder charge with a gang enhancement. So it's a case that is a very high profile case here in Las Vegas, and the Las Vegas Police Department and the DA have said that this is an important case. And joining me to discuss it is somebody who has handled his fair share of high profile cases. He is Gabe Grasso. He represented O.J. Simpson, you may recall, back in 2007, 2008, in that robbery case where O.J. Simpson went into a hotel and robbed some people with the assistance of others of some memorabilia. So, Gabe, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Your thoughts on what happened today?
Well, this is just sort of the, I guess, ugly underbelly of how these cases get started with not much going on. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Mr. Keefe D, that's what he goes.
Keefe D, yes.
Keefe D.
Dwayne Davis,
yeah,
yes.
Dwayne Davis. I'd call him Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Davis is attempting to hire Ross Goodman. He's apparently made an agreement with him to a retainer agreement, but there's still some things to work out, and that's where we're at with this. You know, it's an interesting case, and I spoke with Ross. I've known Ross for 15, 20 years. And he's a capable attorney. I actually tried cases as co-counsel with him, and he can handle this. He'll be able to handle this case. It's just a question of the client getting the lawyer on board and seeing where we're at when the dust settles and we get here in 2 weeks, and hopefully Ross can say, you know, I'm going to confirm his counsel, because that's what he's got to do. He's got to confirm his counsel. And then they're going to set they might set a trial date, they might set a status date, but normally they would set a far out trial date with some dates in between.
Mm-hmm. You said you spoke with Ross. We just saw you over there speaking with him. You've tried cases with him. Tell us a little bit about his style. He seems very sure of himself. He came down here and talked with us. He says 600 pages of grand jury transcripts. He hasn't read them, but he already sees defenses to this case.
One of the most difficult things for somebody to do in a case like this is hire the right lawyer, because I've been trying cases now for going on 35 years all over the country. Most of my practice now is federal, but I tell people that, you know, it's very difficult to really know who to hire. You can't go by the billboards. You can't go by, not that criminal defense lawyers use billboards, but you can't really go by that. And so at least I can tell you that, you know, there are a handful of lawyers in any jurisdiction that are the top criminal defense lawyers. And Ross Goodman is a lawyer who regularly practices criminal defense. You want at least that. Hopefully he'll be able to, and he's got a team around him. He's got a going office. He's here every day. So that's what you need. So I think, you know, like I said, I don't have any doubts that Ross can handle this case. This is a case that it's going to take some nuance, that's for sure.
But let's talk about that. I mean, nuance for sure, because we have somebody who engaged in a proffer agreement back in 2008, 2009. He tells this story about what happened that night. He basically, that statement can't be used against him. But then he goes out starting in 2018 and he starts giving interviews to YouTube channels, to BET, the Death Row Chronicles. He writes a book, Compton Street Legend. He talks about throwing a Glock. I mean, I read the book. He throws a Glock into the back seat. It doesn't appear that this is a work of fiction or that he was telling it as a work of fiction. This was supposed to be a nonfiction account of what happened. So what are the nuances here? I mean, how do you kind of work around this?
Well, obviously, I'm just here commenting.
Sure.
I don't even think, no one on the defense side, I think at this point, I think probably Ross is the most informed defense attorney in town on it, because he's probably had some bits and pieces of information that other people don't know. But from what I know about the case, for example, there have been some articles about this proffer agreement with the feds in California back in the day where he made statements. Well, I think, for example, they made a big deal about that. I think that the state can move forward. The state in Nevada can move forward with this case without using any of the statements he made in the proffer agreement. I mean, that's how I'd approach it if I were the prosecutor. I wouldn't want that issue coming up. But remember, proffer agreements have a lot of, I do that on a regular basis. That's one of the things I do most in my practice is proffer agreements with the feds. And proffer agreements have other parts of them that people don't remember. They just think that whatever you say in the proffer agreement can't be used against you. In reality, if you then in a trial down the road take the stand and say something different than you said in the proffer agreement, they can use the proffer agreement against you. There's sort of contingencies about that, as well as they can use what you say. They can make what's called derivative use, which means the feds can take what you said, or any investigative body, and they can investigate further based on what you say and come up with more evidence. So I don't think that's going to be a big issue in this case, the proffer agreement. I think they have enough to move forward. I mean, the grand jury found probable cause to move forward on this charge. The issue I see is all this stuff has been out there for a long time. Okay, all this information. He wasn't charged in 2018. He wasn't charged in 2019. He was charged in 2023.
Right.
So what's up with that? See, that would be a question I would have as a defense counsel, and I would say, okay, what caused this? What was the trigger? That's what I would have my investigators and trying to figure out what was the reason for this. Maybe there's something that I can use as a defense in how this case got where it is right now. That's one of the issues. And the other thing that it's funny, there's a quote from Albert Einstein that sort of reminds me of what's going on in this case, because they say, well, we have hundreds and hundreds of pages of grand jury testimony, we have many witnesses in the grand jury, and these are all like former detectives in California who investigated, and former Nevada detectives, and all these people who are talking, but there's no gun, there's no car, there's no DNA, there's no real evidence other than testimonial evidence, not only from Mr. Davis, but from other people. And so when you have people talking, that's where defense attorneys can make most of their progress. When you have just testimonial evidence, right? That's where you can challenge things. So I just remember this quote from, when they say, well, look at all the evidence we have now. Back when Albert Einstein came out with the theory of relativity, the general relativity theory, there was a magazine article which was entitled 100 Physicists Against the Theory of Relativity, basically challenging Einstein's, because it was a new theory and people were saying, no, there's no way this is for real. And Einstein was asked about it and he said, why 100? If I am wrong, you only need one. And so that's sort of the attitude I would say, why do you need all this? If this guy really is what you say he is, if he is the guy, why do you need, why is all these little grains of sand building up to finally getting right past the probable cause determination? That would be sort of part of my theme in the case. Because, for example, when you're a person in his world in Mr. Davis's role. One of the things I know from I've represented in federal court the Rolling 60s Crips. Okay, I represented that group. And one thing I learned about representing the Rolling 60s Crips and representing the Hells Angels and the Laughlin Shootout, and I've been involved in those cases and representing individuals who were charged in those conspiracies, is that one of the lifeblood of some of those organizations really is bragging, pontificating, making things up about yourself, getting street cred out of basically what might be BS.
Yeah.
And so those are all things that can be argued. Like, you can actually investigate that and formulate a defense as to how possibly this could just be all BS.
Now, Judge Jones obviously seems a little irritated. She wants to get the ball rolling on this case. Do you see her? Because Ross Goodman said, I think he should be released on an OR bond. He's lived here for years. He's not done anything, bad. Do you see the judge releasing him on bail, maybe with a GPS monitor or something like that?
That's if I were defense counsel, I wouldn't even be worried about the case yet. I would be right now concentrating, if I were, any defense counsel worth his salt. I'm pretty sure Ross is thinking the same way. The main issue here is getting him out, because he was walking around for 27 years, if this is true. And it's not as if he's been arrested 15 times since then. He's been a relatively law-abiding citizen. I'm not sure if he has any.
He did years for drug dealing, but yeah.
I'm just saying, like, in the last few years, he's 60 years old. He's been, he was taking a walk with his wife when he got arrested. So that would be my main concern, is trying to get him out on bail, because this is a weird case. This isn't one of these cases where the alleged murder just happened and the guy's on the run and they finally caught him and now he's not getting out. Because the standard in not only Las Vegas and Clark County but in other jurisdictions is, if it's a first-degree murder accusation, people usually aren't getting out on bail.
Right.
But this is a different kind of case.
Well, Gabe Grasso, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your insight. We appreciate you coming down and talking with us today, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks so much. All right, Michelle, so there you have it. The arraignment will be continued again until November 2nd. You heard Gabe Grasso saying he thinks there are ways to defend this case, and really right now the top priority should be getting a bond for Dwayne Davis, if the judge is so inclined to do that. So we'll have to wait and see. He does have a prior criminal record. He did about 15 years for some drug dealing. He was a very serious drug dealer in the Compton area of California, had a lot of money from what we understand from dealing drugs, and made a lot of money. Whether or not he still has that money, who knows? But we do know that he has a past criminal record. He's somebody who's been through this before. He knows the score. He knows how this goes. So we will wait and see what happens, and we'll have it covered for you.
All right, Anjanette Levy, thank you so much. Great work as always. We're going to check in with you later on in the broadcast. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. Much more trial coverage to do here on Law and Crime.
commitment and for confirmation of counsel.
Okay. State what's your position.
We'll submit it to the court judge.
All right, I'm gonna give you 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks, we gotta get this case moving. So if Mr. Goodman isn't gonna be able to confirm in 2 weeks, then I'm gonna appoint counsel in 2 weeks because we gotta get this case moving. Do you understand? All right, Mr. Goodman, you understand?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, we'll continue this case for 2 weeks. That date is
November 2nd at 9 a.m.
Thank you. Have a good day.
So there you have it. That was the very quick hearing for Keefe D, whose real name is Dwayne Davis. Welcome back to Law and Crime, everyone. Our focus right now is what's happening out in Las Vegas for that arraignment for Dwayne Keefe Davis. It was delayed once again, and this, of course, for the 1996 death of rapper Tupac Shakur. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is there and has more for us now. Anjanette, the arraignment delayed once again, as I just mentioned. What was Keefe D's demeanor like in court today?
Well, Michelle, he walked in, he looked very serious. I mean, this is a guy who's been in Vegas, in the Vegas area, I should say, for many, many years. He's granted interviews. We're used to seeing him in, nice clothes, but this was a different Keefe D than we've seen on YouTube and in the Death Row Chronicles on BET. He's wearing a jail jumpsuit. He's got his wrists shackled at his waist. He looked very serious, very concerned. This is not a laughing matter. It's no joke. So it was very serious. He spoke with his lawyer very briefly. They're still finalizing a retainer agreement. I spoke with Ross Goodman briefly after he gave a press conference down here a short time ago. And he said, there's just some things we need to work out before I can confirm that I am indeed representing him. I should mention that Edie Fall, the attorney that Keefe D mentioned last time we were all in court for this, he is a California attorney, a defense attorney in California, and he is going to, or at least planning to, he told me today, be admitted pro hoc vice here in Las Vegas, in Nevada, so he can assist with the representation of Dwayne Davis. He has worked with Dwayne Davis in the past, and he actually represented Orlando Anderson in the 1990s, 1996, 97, when he was being asked whether or not he was involved in the shooting death of Tupac Shakur. Orlando Anderson, of course, is Dwayne Davis's nephew, the man that Dwayne Davis says he tossed the Glock in the backseat of the car, and then Orlando Anderson shot Tupac Shakur. They had that confrontation at the MGM Grand earlier that night. So obviously, everything I'm saying is according to Dwayne Davis's book, Compton Street Legend. This is what he wrote. Innocent until proven guilty, though, of murder here in the state of Nevada.
And Jeanette, what can you tell us a little bit about Ross Goodman, the lawyer for Keefe Davis? I understand, I heard you say before that his mother is the mayor of Las Vegas. What else can you tell us about him?
Well, I just know that he has handled some high-profile cases out here in Las Vegas. He represented a Cincinnati Bengal at one point in time who got in some trouble. He's done some other high-profile cases. So he is somebody who is used to the spotlight and is an aggressive defense attorney. He's somebody who's very well known here in the courthouse. You heard Gabe Grasso earlier saying he's tried cases with him and he's a capable lawyer. This is somebody who specializes in criminal defense. He is not, some civil lawyer who dabbles in criminal defense. This is what he does. And Ross Goodman said he thinks that he is already seeing defenses to this case. So it will be interesting to see if he indeed confirms that he is, in fact, representing Dwayne Davis on November 2nd. If they finalize that retainer agreement, it will be very interesting to see how he conducts himself throughout this case, the posture he takes. Obviously, during the press conference, he's representing his client. He is saying, there are numerous reasons that Keefe D may have made these statements and said these things in interviews and in his book, and of course, in that proffer, the proffer that took place back in 2008, 2009.
And Jeanette, tell us a little bit more about the next steps. I mean, when do you predict that they will finally see a jury to this?
Well, we don't even know if it'll go to trial, Michelle, really, in all actuality. On November 2nd, Keefe D will enter, we anticipate, he will enter a not guilty plea to that murder charge that carries a gang enhancement. And after that, it's possible that the judge sets a trial date sometime out, unless Dwayne Davis asserts his right to a speedy trial. a trial date could be set, or they could set some status conference dates, things of that nature. And then, Ross Goodman has to get the discovery in this case. There are hundreds of pages of grand jury transcripts that are available. I've read them all. He will be reading them all. He'll also get whatever evidence the state has against Dwayne Davis and have to review that and figure out what is the best path forward. If he asserts his right to a speedy trial, then he'll get a speedy trial, and it'll take place sometime early next year. If he delays it, if he waives his right to a speedy trial, it could be still sometime later next year. It just really depends.
Well, Anjanette, if this does go to trial, since the shooting was so long ago, is it possible that the jury will be less biased and know less about the case than they might have been years ago?
That's very possible. This has been covered quite heavily in the news, but if you ever sit through jury selection, there are people who simply do not watch the news. There are people who don't pay attention to these types of things. And so I don't think that it would be that difficult to seat a jury in this case. This is a pretty big county, Clark County, Nevada. This is Las Vegas. There are a lot of people who live here. So there's a pretty large jury pool from which you could select a jury.
And finally, Anjanette, was there anyone in that courtroom that was related to Keefe D that was there that stood out that you want to point out?
No, Michelle, we did not see anybody who appeared to be family or friends in the courtroom. I met a man outside of the courtroom afterwards who didn't make his way into the courtroom during the hearing, but he was a friend of Dwayne Davis, and he showed up, and he didn't really want to say anything at this point, but he did show up to support his friend.
Well, Anjanette, again, if this does go to trial, do you expect it to be a zoo like some of the other high-profile cases that you have covered in your career? Because at the end of the day, this is, if not the biggest hip-hop murder case that ever took place.
It could be, Michelle. It could be, or it could be one of those things where we've been allowed to live stream the proceedings thus far. A lot of times, when you live stream a proceeding, you have an influx of media and other people at the very beginning of the case, and then it kind of dies down throughout the case because people can cover it and watch it from other locations. They don't have to be physically present at the courthouse. So it could be, but it is interesting. Both last time we were here and this time, we've only seen maybe two sets of fans between the last court appearance and this court appearance. So we aren't seeing throngs of fans showing up. So I think that you're not going to see a lot of that. And we're in Las Vegas. You're not going to get maybe hardcore Tupac fans from LA traveling here and things like that. They can watch it on YouTube, our YouTube channel. They can watch it other ways.
Well, I know you've been speaking to some very interesting people inside that courthouse, as we heard before, the former attorney for O.J. Simpson. Who can we expect to be your guest the next hour?
Well, if she is still walking around here, I am going to speak with a Tupac fan from Washington State who traveled here. And she and her husband are really the only set of fans we've seen here at the hearing today. But she seems like a pretty avid fan, and she said she's also a TikTok influencer. So we are going to track her down and bring her on in the next hour.
Finally, we look forward to that, of course, Anjanette. But do you think, you mentioned that there were not a lot of people, not a lot of fans. Do you feel that at some point this will pick up and it'll really gain more traction? Because at the end of the day, this is a case that people are still talking about, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there is a lot of interest in the case, and maybe it will gain more traction. But traveling to Las Vegas, unless you live here, traveling to Las Vegas is a lot to come to a proceeding where somebody is simply supposed to enter a plea of not guilty. So maybe in the future, as we approach a trial date, it will pick up steam. But I think for now, people are just kind of hanging back and watching. There were people I anticipated would be here today who have connections to this case who ended up not coming. So maybe they just decided to stay at home and watch from there.
Well, as you were just talking, I want to get back talking a little bit more about the demeanor of Keefe Davis, because as you were talking, they just showed a clip of him looking very calm, and you mentioned he looked very serious. Now, if you look at the other interviews that he has done in the past, even in his body cam footage arrest, he seemed really cool about it. What was different today? I mean, do you think he really felt the vibes? Like, I'm in this courtroom now, this is it.
I mean, I think it's different because he's been sitting in jail now for almost 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks. It will be 3 weeks tomorrow that he was taken into custody as he was taking a walk outside of his home in Henderson, Nevada, which is not too far from here. And I think that, he is calm because he's been through this before. He knows the drill. But at the same time, I felt like there was a seriousness to his facial expression. He's charged with murder. I mean, he had done serious time for drug dealing in the past. He had done 15 years. He knows how to do time. And he's somebody in a gang. He was a gang leader who's made it to living 60 years old. Everybody else who was supposedly in that car that night is dead.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Anjanette,
there
I'm
you
just going
have
to
it.
interrupt you real quick. We have to go to a break now, but we're going to go back to you at the top of the hour. You're watching Law and Crime. Much more from Vegas after this.
bit, and you're never supposed to ask a woman her age, but I'm going to just ask you. I mean, were you a child when Tupac Shakur was killed? I mean,
I was. He passed away before I was even born.
Okay.
I was born in 1999.
Okay, got it. But you like his music. You told me you have some signs outside, things of that nature. What is it about his music and about him that you appreciate so much?
I like his songs a lot, and especially his song about his mom, because like my mom passed away when I was 4, so that tremendously makes a big impact on my life. And I just was like so happy to hear like that the person that me and my dad loves him. Like he's like, because I had like on Facebook like cover photo, I made him my cover photo, Tupac. But besides the point, like I just started following a few things about Tupac and saw that the dude KPD got arrested for allegedly being around or whatever.
But you traveled here from Seattle, so obviously this meant something to you. You're a TikTok influencer. What do you plan on doing with this on TikTok?
I'm making a point that people need to show up and make a point to be here for the people that aren't able to speak for themselves.
Well, Brianna, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a safe trip back to Seattle. All right, take care. All right, Michelle, we're going to send it back to you. That was Brianna Caldwell, and we'll have more coverage later on YouTube. We'll be talking with some other people, so I'll send it back to you for now.
All right, Anjanette, but quickly before you go, any final thoughts on what happens next? Anything happening in that courtroom worth noting?
I'm sorry, you said with a motive? Is that what you said?
No, I said, is there anything worth noting that's happening in that
worth
courtroom
noting. I'm
today?
sorry. Yeah, sorry, it was a little hard to hear you there. No, not really. I mean, it was so quick. You saw how quick it was. Yet again, another delay in this case. What I thought was interesting, though, was Judge Jones was very serious and said, look, if you don't have a lawyer next time we're here, November 2nd, I'm appointing one for you. We're getting this case moving. And we've been told by people here at the courthouse, she is a no-nonsense judge. She wants things to run on time, and that's it. So she is going to make sure that this case moves along.
All right. Well, Anjanette, thank you so much for that update. We're going to hear more from you later on in the broadcast. And as Anjanette mentioned, the arraignment delayed once again, but we're going to show you what happened earlier today in that Las Vegas courtroom. Here it is.
Will you tell us how you got involved in this case?
So multiple people contacted my office from California and here. And I've been meeting with them for several weeks, and we're close to finalizing a deal for me to participate in that case.
How would you defend a case like this? How do you defend a case like this?
There's obvious defenses already, but in all fairness, I haven't even confirmed as counsel. I haven't reviewed the grand jury transcripts, so I have no actual evidence.
We need to ask you if your client intends to plead not guilty.
Mr. Davis informed me that, of course, he intends to plead not guilty.
And did you see, having reviewed the transcripts of the grand jury, did you see weaknesses in the case that district attorney presented to the grand jury?
Well, as I just said, I'm not yet hired to review the grand jury transcripts or to prepare a motion if one is needed. But obviously, the things that jump out is that there's no gun, there's no car, and there's no witnesses from 27 years ago.
Mr. Goodman, when things get finalized, do you plan to ask for bail?
Of course, I think Mr. Davis should be released on OR. He's not a flight risk. He's not a danger to the community. He's lived in Henderson for 11 years. He's not going anywhere.
Ross, how do you defend someone who hung out the time publicly has said that they were there, they know what happened, and that they were handing this murder weapon to the person? How do you defend that?
Well, you have to look at the facts and circumstances surrounding why he gave those statements at the time that he gave those statements. But again, I haven't reviewed those statements in detail. I haven't reviewed the other evidence, but I believe there's a motive an incentive on why somebody would make a statement like that, even though it may not be true.
Is DD Paul still representing him? Is DD Paul still representing Mr. Davis?
I'm not sure what his relationship is right now, or whether or not he's been associated into the case.
Could you speak at all about the topper agreement that he made with LAPD detectives 15 years ago?
That's one thing I haven't reviewed in detail, so I can't make a comment regarding that.
When you talk about how large this case is, I mean, how much work does this make for you going forward?
It's a big case. I mean, it's 27 years in the making. So I understand there's about 600 pages of grand jury transcripts, and you can imagine the amount of evidence and potentially impeachment evidence that comes along with all these witnesses that are going to come out of the woodwork.
And as you just saw, that was Ross Goodman, who is going to be Keefe D's lawyer in weeks to come. The arraignment delayed once again. So as I bring in former NYPD Commander Corey Pegues, this is obviously very frustrating for the judge, but the judge said in that courtroom, you have 2 weeks to really basically get it together and then go from there, because people really know about this case already. They want to get going, right, Corey?
Oh, most definitely. And from what we understand, this judge is a no-nonsense judge. It's like, okay, this is the second time that you come to court without a lawyer. If you don't have one in 2 weeks, I'm assigning you one, and we're going to get this case going.
Let's talk a little bit about Ross Goodman himself. So from my understanding, he's a very good criminal defense attorney. But what's interesting is that he comes from a mayoral background. His mother is currently the mayor of Las Vegas, and I believe he was a mayor as well. How does that dynamic come into all of this?
Well, let me tell you about Ross Goodman. For me, first impressions is he's smart, he's articulate, he's cool, calm. He has a working knowledge of the case so far, with just, him not even being intimately involved in the case. He sounds and looks very professional and someone that's going to be on their game. And as far as his mother being the mayor and him being a mayor, I don't think that's really going to play a major part. It's going to be about him having, enough knowledge about the case to come with a defense. And you already see he's coming out there. No ballistics, no gun, no vehicle.
No motive.
So, no motive. And it's almost like he's saying, well, yeah, there's a lot of statements by Keefe D, but like loose lips sink ship. He's saying all this stuff. Can we corroborate this stuff? Obviously, the prosecution corroborated something at that grand jury because they went and locked him up.
All right. Well, all eyes on this case, but delayed once again. We're, of course, going to follow this as all of these updates come. We're going to take a quick break here on Law and Crime, but it's been a very busy day of trial coverage across the country. We're going to check in on some other cases as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Everyone's back from lunch. What's the next issue?
Your Honor, we need to make a motion based on the question from plaintiff's counsel through the last witness. Question from Mr. Anderson was, isn't it true you testified you don't have any remorse for any of this? The question was timely objected to. According to the law in the state of Florida.
And Mr. Hunter asked me to instruct the jury to disregard the last question, which is what I did.
Yes, Your Honor. We appreciate the instruction. The law requires us to make the timely motion for mistrial at the time of the statement, which we would have done after lunch, but I know Your Honor had to go. Just to make the record on this, Your Honor, State Farm Auto versus Thorne at 110 Southern 3rd 66, a Florida 2nd District case, held that it was improper and mandated reversal for new trial, where plaintiff's counsel suggested in closing argument that the defense was never taking responsibility, and shame on these defendants. Again, in Intramed v. Guider at 93 Southern 3rd 503, the 4th District found the plaintiff's argument that the defendants never took responsibility and never apologized was grounds for a new trial. And again, in Cohen versus Philip Morris at 203 Southern 3rd 942, the Florida 4th District also said that counsel's comment during closing argument that the defense never took responsibility and failed to apologize were egregious, unacceptable, and grounds for a new trial. Based on the comment made from plaintiff's counsel and the prevailing case law in Florida, we believe we're entitled to a new trial. We're moving for a mistrial on that basis at this time.
Plaintiffs, what do you want to say?
This is a punitive damages case, and the issue of whether or not the defendants are ratifying the behavior, approve of the behavior, and otherwise have decided that, and actually what her statement was, I was getting to, was at the end, she says, I did everything fine. I don't believe I did anything wrong to that. To my question about, have you checked back with her, and then do you have any remorse over this? And so in a punitive damages case, it's a little different situation. I haven't studied the defense's case to see whether any of them are punitive damages cases, but the court made an instruction at that time, and we certainly don't believe that it rises in any, I'm not sure it's error on my part. From what I've read, I would have to study it, but it certainly doesn't rise to the level of a mistrial.
Well, one, the court already instructed the jury to disregard the question. There wasn't an answer to the question. The court has previously and will in the future again instruct the jury that that Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital is not responsible for the call it the Chapter 39 stuff, just because it's probably the easiest shorthand to say at this time. So, I don't think that there's any need at this point for a mistrial on a question that was asked that was never answered.
Your Honor, the second issue we would like to address briefly is we prepared a special instruction that we'd like the court to deliver now regarding suicide. May I approach with it?
Sure. Has this gone to Mr. Elegant?
It's gone to Mr. Anderson today. It was based on the jury's questioning today, and it goes to the fact that the court has already dismissed on summary judgment the duty owed to Beata Kowalski to prevent her suicide. There were a number of questions from this jury, and I thought it would be the defense is requesting, based on the timeliness of it, that a short statement be read to the jury to make it clear that we do not have a duty to prevent Beata's suicide based on the questions that they're asking.
Your Honor, this is kind of, if anything, I guess I'd characterize it as a self-inflicted wound. We asked no questions on cross-examination of Dr. Teta Sanchez before the jury's questions. The defense brought out from her several statements allegedly made by Beata Kowalski to Dr. Teta Sanchez about being exhausted, being overwhelmed, and then further statements that later on she stated she was okay with her family. And then stepping into territory we've been prohibited from entering. Then there was discussion on direct regarding the propriety of Baker acting someone and those types of issues. So to give an instruction based on their own questioning, we feel would be unnecessary and improper.
I agree that Mr. Hunter asked a question that elicited this issue, and I don't think there was an objection because I was thinking there would be because this is not an issue in the case because it's already been summary judgmented out. I don't think there's a need for a jury instruction at this time. There you go. What's next?
You want to talk about the grant?
Well, Mr. Henson brings up, we learned just before lunch that the defense plans on calling Detective Graham tomorrow. I think Ms. Crawls and I discussed this briefly. We'd like to discuss this after the jury's gone for the day. Our objection having Detective Graham testify. We do have a motion for a curative instruction as well that was filed yesterday. And it deals with it's within the motion you looked at earlier. So there were two proposed curative instructions in there. And the one that we'd like to discuss now had to do with the argument concerning Dr. Richard's testimony and the suggestion that the Kowalskis, suggestion by defense counsel, that the Kowalskis had moved for a continuance of the dependency proceeding. And for that reason, and then that there was a final hearing scheduled in February.
Does this have anything to do with the witnesses this afternoon?
It does not. It does not.
We can talk about that this evening. Anything else about what's going to happen over the next few hours?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
We have 5 minutes. Why don't we use that for exhibits?
Uh, 3040, Judge, second page.
What is this?
This is pediatric pulmonary associates telephone documentation. From June of 2015. I guess just one page.
Hey, can someone help me out? That's what's said, maybe make it larger.
Says new to office, recent admit, new cough constant.
New what?
Cough.
New cough?
Cough constant, albuterol, or something just given.
It gets into the medication action plan for.
It's got to be Ms. Cross.
Yeah, it says, it gives the medication, the prednisone, when to give it. And the emergency action plan for her asthma. And it's in June of 2015.
I don't think this is a legal objection, but it's indecipherable. And
Also, Dr. Gondor is one
Right,
other.
but can we just have one per?
yeah.
I didn't hear a legal objection.
Okay. Objection, relevance, hearsay. I'm not even sure who wrote this, knows, and we can't read it. And that doesn't mean the defense can either.
Well, it's coming from a doctor's office.
Yes, it's Dr. Gondor.
Court's going to overrule the relevance, and I don't think legibility is a basis to keep something out when we're talking about doctor's handwriting.
3041 is the.
Or my handwriting, for that matter.
I'm sorry. 3041 is the surgery center for the pinky fracture that's been discussed.
For the pinky fracture, okay.
The one in
This is
2020.
2020. Okay. Now, how many pages is this one?
It's 26 pages, but I don't know what the objection is. I don't know how they could say it's not relevant. There's been testimony about her visit, when she went, when she delayed. complaints.
Seems like maybe perhaps the amount should be redacted, but no objection otherwise.
The amount.
The bill, you mean the bill?
Yeah, the 10,000.